Well, good evening, and good evening, everyone. I apologize for my tardiness. We've been having some power outages, and it's been giving us a little bit of a fit, so I had to restart everything. So just bear with me while I get set up for just a moment. But guys, thank you so much again for being here. We are back. We are back. It's always a pleasure to be here. Always a pleasure to be with you all tonight. We're going to not waste any more time. Again, I sincerely apologize for my tardiness. Guys, if you are getting online, make sure you're liking, make sure that you are tagging some people. Again, new life, as always. If there are some people that you know should be on this evening and you don't see them, make sure that you let them know that we are on for our midweek refuel. As everybody comes in, again, make sure you're tagging some people, make sure you're sharing this, and we're going to jump right into it. But first, we're going to go ahead and pray, and then we're going to talk about this sense of entitlement. We're going to talk about expecting less and doing more. Father God, we thank you for this time. We thank you for this moment. We thank you for this opportunity. We thank you for this space and this platform that we continue to reach those, no matter where they are, whether in their vehicles, at home, en route, or in the sanctuary. We thank you that we have now the ability to continue to share this message quickly, that we can share it out far and wide, that we can continue to show the love of Christ and to show what you've done for us in the way that we not only communicate and convey, but our behaviors, our thoughts, and the way that we reset and are disciples for you. That's that you will be with me right now, that you will speak to me, speak through me, that it be less of me and more of you in this moment, so that it'll be what you have called your people to hear right now for tonight. We ask all these things in Jesus' name. Amen and amen. Listen, guys, we are excited again to be here. And as you see in the description, we're talking about expecting less and doing more. So this was a lesson or an idea that came to me last week, and Pastor and I were talking about it. And I was just thinking about this idea of entitlement. And I was thinking about this idea that we sometimes think that faith is a substitute for work, or a substitute for responsibility, or a substitute for accountability, or a substitute for us taking ownership of certain aspects of our lives, taking ownership of certain things that we need to be doing in our everyday lives and movements, and the way that we're supposed to be expressing, and the way that we're supposed to be moving in our pathway and moving on target. You guys, hold on one second. I see that this thing is backwards. My screen is backwards. So give me one moment, please. Sorry, I'm using a new machine today, so I am just trying to see if this will let me flip this around. I apologize, but that threw me off for a second there, so. All right, guys, that's weird. So we're going to shift a little bit, right? You got to be flexible. All right, so I guess we just have to be backwards. It's not letting me flip it around or mirror the image, so I apologize for that. But we're going to do it anyway. So when we talk about entitlement, guys, we're talking about doing less, expecting less, and doing more. We're talking about being disciplined, right? And discipleship is what we've been talking about this evening. So when we talk about that, we're talking about the fact that we have to be disciplined. We have to do some things. We have to operate. We have to continue to move, right? We talk about all the verbs, and yes, we always quote that without works, faith is dead, right? So we understand that, but I think that we miss the part where we talk about having responsibility. We're going to jump into some of that tonight. We're going to break some of that down this evening. And we're going to talk about the fact that your faith, again, is not a substitute for you taking accountability, for you taking ownership, for you having responsibility, for you knowing there's some things that you have to do. There's some activity, as we know, but there's some other things that we forego sometimes because we think that we have faith. And we just think that everything's going to work out and God's got me and I ain't got to do anything. And I don't have to study. I don't have to learn. I don't have to improve. I don't have to enhance. I don't have to upskill, even in the spirit, right? Even in the way that we study the word, there should be skilling. There should be upskilling. What am I saying here? That there should be opportunity for you to learn how to study better, to learn how to study more completely, to add more tools in your arsenal, to add more things that you can study with. Right. And so there's always going to be improvement and areas of improvement. And sometimes that we think that we don't have to do anything because we have faith, or we don't have to do anything because we've arrived. You guys know how I feel about the whole idea of being Christian. I am Christian kind of gives that sense of arrogance, like, oh, I have arrived. I don't have to do anything else. I don't have to continue. I don't have to improve. I don't have to continue to push forward. And so I want to make sure that we understand that this is also not saying that we have to overwork ourselves. This is not saying, when I say do more, I'm not saying add more to your schedule. I'm not saying work yourself into oblivion. I'm not saying work yourself until you're too tired. I'm not saying work yourself into exhaustion. Many of those who have been with us on this journey for some time know that I talk extensively about making sure that you have balance, making sure that you take a break, making sure that you are getting that rest. Pastor and I talk often. He and I have both said this on this platform, that we have to schedule those times off. And one of the things that we have to make sure that we don't do is when we see a break in our calendars, and when we see a window of opportunity, that we don't immediately think, oh, I can fill that with something. Because that's one of the sneaky ways that the enemy will keep you exhausted. When you look at a space in your calendar, when you look at this couple of days here, there's nothing going on, you're saying, oh, I don't have anything going on. I can do something. So when we say do more, we're not saying continuously adding more and more and more and more to your plate. That's not what we're talking about, right? It's also not talking about doing things that weren't assigned for you and weren't assigned to you, right? It's not about stepping in someone else's lane. We're not going to go down that rabbit hole, because we've talked about that also. But we're not talking about going into someone else's lane, also doing more because you got to go do somebody else's job. Let them learn how to do their job, right? And be able to guide them, support them, but don't get in their way. You see, when you're not in your lane, and you've heard me say this before, you are obstructing both you and them. You're getting in their way, their progress, right, and their improvement just as much as you're getting in your own. So when we say do more, we're not saying to get in the way of other people. We're not saying taking on someone else's job or responsibility or task. We're not saying add more tasks and more obligations to what you're already doing. That's not what we're talking about. But what we are talking about is that posture of your faith, because sometimes when we begin to have this air of entitlement, we start expecting results, but we don't want to do the work, right? How many people do we know? Maybe we've been guilty of this ourselves, right? Where we just think that because I am here now, because I am now in the room, because I now occupy the role, the title, or the position, that things should just happen, that things should just move automatically, that now that I have stepped into this, maybe this role in leadership, in ministry, that now everything's just going to work the way it should work, and that we don't have to actually do anything to get the division or the ministry or department to improve. And that's that sense of entitlement. That's also the level 1 leadership. I've been reading the 5 levels of leadership, and level 1 is position. And that just means that you leverage your position, but you don't actually do anything to help empower people. You don't do anything to help get them in the correct space and in the correct role for them to be successful. You just make people do it because you're in charge. You see, that's entitlement. And so we want to make sure that we're not using our faith as that mechanism of entitlement to say, well, my faith is greater than yours, or I'm the pastor, or I am the youth leader, or I'm whatever. And so you must do what I say do. When you need to make sure that you are cultivating inclusivity, and that you're making sure that you are the example of people who want to work with other people, and that you are trying your best to give them opportunities, to allow them to grow, to allow them to learn, to allow them to lead. Right. So it's important to understand that entitlement will breed also dissension. I don't want to get ahead of myself, but it's important to understand that when you start having entitlement and arrogance, you are going to creep into a place where you're not going to be effective. And that's no matter where you are. If that's in your relationship, you think you know everything, can't nobody tell you nothing, and you wonder why your relationship's suffering. You wonder why your partner won't talk to you. You wonder why your partner won't bring you grievances. You wonder why your partner won't open up. You wonder why your partner's closed. You wonder why all of a sudden there's distance and discomfort between you. Why? Because you're being entitled. You think that everything should be yours, everything should be your way, and everything should be the way that you say it should. The same thing holds true with your children. We as parents oftentimes think that, oh, well, I'm the parent, I know the best. You may know more in a certain thing, but you don't know everything. Be teachable even when you're being a leader. Even when you are tasked with the responsibility of guiding other people, still be teachable. So you don't want to be arrogant. You don't want to have a sense of entitlement. Oh, because I'm the parent, you have to do what I say do every time I say do it. Now, by and large, if you're doing the right thing, most kids are going to fall in line. But when they start questioning, you have to start looking at yourself and saying, why do they not believe that this is the right way to go? But see, entitlement says it doesn't matter what I do, it's what I say. But what you do looks completely opposite of what they are telling other people, what you're telling your children, what you're telling the public, what you're telling your people and your direct reports in your ministry or in your department. The way you move looks completely different. But you think that because you are saying it and because you occupy a particular space or particular bit of authority, entitlement, that everybody's just going to do it because you say. And that's a dangerous place to be. And so that's kind of the way that we will shape this conversation for tonight. And we're going to jump right into some points. But I first want to give you our scripture, which is Proverbs 13:4. And it says, the soul of a sluggard desireth and hath nothing, but the soul of the diligent shall be made fat. So I looked at that word sluggard, and that meant sloth. It meant laziness, right? And so when you kind of transcribe this into a bit more modern text, it's when the desire or the thing that they want most, right, of a lazy person, right, they're not going to have anything. Why? Because there was no activity. It's only desire, right? It's only that you want this thing, that you are wanting to see something change, or you're wanting something better for yourself, or maybe you're wanting a new partner, maybe you're wanting a new job, maybe you're wanting whatever it could be that God is maybe giving you a vision of and a glimpse of, and you're like, yes, I want that, I'm going to do that, but I'm doing absolutely nothing to get there. That is the entitlement that we're talking about. That's the entitlement that Proverbs is talking about. It's saying that you can have all the desire in the world, but you're not doing anything, so you have nothing. But it says on the back end, it says the soul of the diligent. Diligent means there's activity. Diligent means that, and again, this is not about adding to your schedule. It's not about doing more work in terms of physical activity. Maybe being diligent is making your plan. Maybe being diligent is doing your homework. Maybe being diligent is studying and research. Maybe being diligent is taking a class. Maybe being diligent is opening up your heart and your mind to be able to listen and receive not only guidance, but criticism. Maybe that's what the diligence is. But what it's saying here is the soul of the diligent will be made fat. That just means that there will be abundance. And so we need to understand that there are things that have to happen in order for you to get to this place of abundance. The first point that I want to put is that entitlement distorts expectation. And we were just talking about that. Guys, make sure you put these in the chat. So entitlement distorts expectation. What I'm saying is that you start to think that there's going to be things and outcomes that are disconnected from effort. You think that it's just going to materialize and you have to do nothing to make that happen, right? You want a promotion, but you're not studying for that new job. You're not learning that new role. Perhaps you're not positioning yourself with the leadership. Maybe you're not taking on leadership opportunities. Maybe you're not stepping up to the plate. Maybe you're not being assertive, Right? Maybe you're not being proactive. There's a whole host of things that go into that, but you want this promotion, but you're not doing anything that would lend itself to you being deserving of that opportunity. You want breakthrough, but you don't have any consistency. You want God to move, but you're not doing anything. Right? Remember that He's also looking at your activity. He's also looking at the posture of your heart, the state of your heart, right? The condition of your heart. Are you simply saying, God, I want you to help me be a millionaire, but I can't stop spending money on going out to the club? I want you to help me take care of some things, but I can't budget and get my bills paid. And then we want to be the victim, right? And we think that God's going to do a thing when He's been providing us with more than enough money to be able to take care of whatever we got to take care of. But we are not being diligent with those funds, as an example, right? So we have to make sure that we understand that entitlement will distort the expectation. You'll believe that whatever's coming will come in spite of you being inactive, and that's simply not the case. Now, God can bless you simply for being obedient. We talk about that all the time, but your obedience is activity in and of itself. Being obedient means that you are listening, you are praying, you are fasting, you are helping, you are supporting, you are sowing, whether it's your time or your finances. You are doing the things. That's obedience. You are doing the things, and God can continue to give you a harvest. So the danger is when we believe that things are going to happen, but we are not going to do anything to get ourselves ready. I'll give you one more example and move on to point number 2. Many of us have come out of really bad relationships. Maybe some of us are in bad relationships right now. And we believe that we deserve someone who's going to treat us better. And I would never disagree. Everyone deserves somebody who's going to treat them well and take care of them and make them feel special and important. You come out of this relationship and you are expecting God to bring you that new person, but you are not doing any of the work to be ready for that person to arrive. You're not doing anything to become healed. You're not doing anything to become more open. You're not doing anything to become more understanding. You're not doing anything to become more objective. You're not doing anything. You're just still the same person that had your own flaws, your own faults, your own issues. And you expect a new person, this next person, to come in while you are not ready for them. You see, we get in, that's a whole other conversation about not being ready for the right person. Sometimes that person won't arrive, so that person is sitting back waiting because you're not ready for them yet. And God's not going to let you hurt someone else because you're not prepared for them. Think about that for a moment. That's that distorted expectation. You expect a person to come in and be X, Y, and Z, but you are not ready. You haven't done anything. You haven't made any adjustments. So, point number 2, entitlement creates passive faith. What do we mean by passive faith? Right? If faith without works is dead, that means you are essentially creating a faith that you are not working toward. You're not stretching. You're not using that faith. You see, faith is not just something you believe in, but faith is something that you deploy. Faith is something that you use. Faith is something that you activate, right? And you use it to empower and change and shift and believe more and understand more and grow more and become this best version of yourself. So when you have this entitlement, you think that God's going to do it, so I ain't got to do anything, right? You're hands off, right? We want Jesus take the wheel, but you're supposed to have the map, right? You're supposed to have the map. You're supposed to be telling, and I'm not saying you tell God what to do, but just stay with me for a moment. What I'm saying is that you're navigating. Jesus is driving. He's making sure that you're in the right lane. He's making sure you're going the right speed. He's making sure you're not going to wreck and go into the opposite lane of traffic. But you're supposed to be navigating and looking at the map and understanding where you're supposed to be going. You see, there's still work for you to do, even if Jesus is the driver, right? You're still going to be a co-pilot. But sometimes entitlement says that we get to just sit back and watch and not participate. You see, faith by its very definition is participatory. You've got to utilize your faith. You got to be active in your faith. You have to be activating and using that faith in order to see that result. You see, entitlement sometimes creates this ideology that I don't have to do, move, shake, nothing. I can just sit back and let it all turn out, right? And then we wonder why we feel like we're getting drugged behind right, behind the vehicle, right? Like we are just, life is just dragging us along. Well, we haven't done anything. We're not making any adjustments. We're just letting the faith, right, that passive faith, and not doing any activity. And so we believe that nothing, we don't have to do anything. And so now we're just sitting back and we are being, I don't want to say victims, but, we are just along for the ride. Right? And that's not the life that God had called us to have. It's about abundance, and abundance requires activity. Abundance requires responsibility. Abundance requires discipline. Abundance requires you to be able to understand what to use, be judicious, when to use it, have wisdom, right? It requires all these things. And so your faith is how you begin to understand and unlock the different elements of how you're supposed to be operating and moving. But if you are entitled, you think you don't have to do it. So with that being said, right, point number 3 goes right into that, right? Entitlement rejects responsibility, right? This is flat out rejection of responsibility. It's saying that I am not going to do it. It's not my job. It's not my role. God, this is on you. And God is saying, I can do it, but I need you to do some things too. But see, entitlement says that I don't have to do any. There's no effort, right? We shirk the ownership. We say that we don't have to be part of the equation. We just back to the point number 2, we get to just sit back and watch. And so we actually flat out reject responsibility, and we say, no, we're not going to do anything. We're not going to do that. We're not going to be accountable. We're not going to take ownership. We are going to just sit back in our own little space, in our own little square, and we're not going to do anything. But we still want God to move. We still want God to work. We still want God to improve. We still want God to move exponentially, right? And to build and to grow. We still want all of that, but we're not going to do anything. We're not going to take part in it, right? We're just going to wait until it comes, and then we're going to take credit for it. That's a whole other conversation. We're going to wait till it comes, and we'll take credit for it. Right. But spoiler alert, sometimes it never comes because you're not willing to take responsibility. You're not willing to do any activity. You're not willing to take ownership. You're not willing to hold yourself accountable for the things that aren't happening. Right. So sometimes that thing you're believing in is delayed well beyond when it should be because, well, God's waiting on you. He can do it anytime, in an instant, light switch, tomorrow, right now, 30 seconds. But you got to remove that sense of entitlement. And point number 4, and then I'm going to get off out of here. Entitlement skips the process. Everything we've been talking about is a process, right? There's a growth. There's a trajectory. There is a learning curve. There is a spectrum. There is a set of steps, guys, and in fact processes that allow you to get to your next level. You've heard me talk about this often. You can't beat level 12 with level 9 faith. You can't beat level 12 with level 9 thinking. You can't beat level 12 with level 9 tactics. You can't beat level 12 with level 9 strategy. So that means that there is a process that gets you to the place where you can now address level 12 and be successful. But see, entitlement says that I'm going to go to 12 and I'm going to make it no matter what. So you skip all the learning. You skip all the lessons. You skip all the encouragement. You skip all the guidance. You skip all the teaching. You skip all the education. And then you wonder why you fail miserably. You see, we don't want to talk about that. You wonder why you fail miserably because you skipped everything that was important for you to be prepared for that. Same thing when we talk about the relationship, right? You want that great person, but you skip the whole process of becoming the person that they need you to be as well. You see, God needs you to go through the process. And sometimes that process is painful. Sometimes that process sucks. Sometimes that process is not enjoyable. But you have to go through the process because what God needs you to do, you have to be ready to execute. And you can't be ready to execute if you refuse to go through the process. Or in point number 3, if you reject responsibility to go through the process, you cannot possibly be ready for the next step. You cannot be ready for that door to open. You cannot be ready to step in that room. You cannot be ready to step into that blessing. You cannot be ready to be a blessing because you are refusing to take responsibility and you're trying to skip the process. You're trying to circumvent the plan that God has for you because you're trying to hurry up and get to the end of whatever you're trying to get to the end of. You see, that's what entitlement makes you think. I don't have to do this. I exist. And so all I have to do is be here. And voila, abracadabra, here we are. Right? Open sesame. That's not how that works. And so I want to encourage you guys today to, if you are looking at yourself and you're hearing this word and you're thinking, man, there's some areas where I felt entitled, where I felt like I didn't have to do the work, where I felt like I didn't have to put in effort, where I felt like I didn't have to actually do anything. Reevaluate those places. Reevaluate those places. Now, again, I want you to strike balance. This is where wisdom and discernment comes in, because you have to make sure you're not just adding work to be busy. We talked about busyness versus productivity. We've talked about that. Go back and check that lesson out. So I'm not saying make yourself busy, but I am saying make sure that you are being productive. Make sure that you're being impactful for yourself and for others, for your job, for your task, for your calling, for your path, for your walk, for your cross. You have to be impactful. And in order to do that, you have to make sure that you don't feel like you don't have to do anything. You see, there's many people who get into senior leadership who all of a sudden think that they've arrived and they don't have to work anymore. They don't have to address their sheep anymore. They don't have to sit in one-on-one. They don't have to be around. I mean, we've seen it. We've heard it all over for years now. You have people who get to a certain place and a certain level, and all of a sudden you can't reach them. You can't call them. Oh, call my people. Oh, call my staff. Talk to someone else. There's this whole wall. Now, again, you do have to protect your space. You have to protect your spirit. But just simply to be like, I am done dealing with people because now I've gotten to this place where I am unreachable, right? That's entitlement. Right? And the people who are on the receiving, and think about this, the people who are on the receiving end of that feel neglected. They feel dismissed. They feel disenfranchised. They feel discouraged. Why? Because they can't get what they need, because all of a sudden they think that they are insignificant, because that's how entitlement makes other people feel. And so if you know what that feels like, then it would behoove you, and I would encourage you to make sure that you address the entitlement in your life, that you are not being a person that makes other people feel too small and feel like they're not enough and feel like they'll never accomplish anything and feel like they'll never get anywhere. And the world is already making a lot of people feel that way. Don't you dare be one of those people. So with all that being said, I hope that you guys have learned some things. I hope that you're looking at this and you're saying, you know what, maybe I've had entitlement. Maybe I need to expect less. And when I say expect less, that is the entitlement, right? What I'm saying is that you can't just expect all these things and do nothing. So that's the point of the title. Expect less and do more. God's going to do what God does. He's going to, right, fulfill every prophecy. He's going to show you and fulfill every vision. He's going to answer every prayer, but you also have to do some stuff. We've been talking about this. And so when we talk about discipleship, we talk about activity. You see, discipleship isn't a title. Discipleship is a responsibility. It's a calling, it's a task, and it comes with things that you have to do. And so as we move into this time and understanding and learning and grooming of discipleship, understand that this is not a time to become entitled. This is not a time to think that you arrived. This is not a time for you to think that you've made it. This is a time to put in more work. And so prepare yourself, prepare your minds, prepare your hearts to put that work in so you can continue to be impactful, that you can continue to add value to the kingdom, and that you can continue to expand the kingdom so that you can be that light, and that you can be that encouragement and that empowerment, and that's someone who uplifts, and that example of what it means to be a follower and to be Christ-like. Listen, guys, that's all the time I have for you tonight. I hope that you enjoyed this message. I hope that it was challenging. I hope it was encouraging, but I hope that you take it and you think about it and you apply it, just as we always talk about. With that being said, we talk about doing. We believe that new life is good ground to sow into. So we'll put our giving methods up on the screen. We've got our Cash App, our Zelle, Giveify, and of course we have our PO Box if you want to mail it in. Those of you who are online, if you can and are able, type seed sown in the chat. We're doing our $26 seed for 2026. And Pastor, I will make sure that we pray over your seed, because we know there's a harvest and you are blessed by your obedience. Again, if it's not financial, you cannot, and we understand that. So not everybody's in that position. We sow your time, sow your ear, sow a good word, sow encouragement. Help somebody else. Open a door. Smile. Greet them. Say good morning. Something. Sow something positive into this world so you can get something positive back. Guys, don't forget that we have our positive pivot. Speaking of positive, on Saturdays, I'll give you guys a brief word to help us transition from last week into next week. And of course, we have our Sunday morning worship experience at 47 Beaver Ave. Be there or be square, because you won't be around. As Pastor says, get your hips in the church. We want to see you out. We want to see you celebrating. We want to see you worshiping. We want to see you participating with our brothers and sisters, because why? Discipleship takes participation. Your faith takes participation. So we want to see you out. We want to see you participate. We want to see you to bring other people, invite some people to come out and enjoy worshiping with us. And you guys are not in the New Jersey area, you'll be right here online with me, New Life International, and we will be right here with them, virtually celebrating, worshiping, and praising with our brothers and sisters. Guys, again, hope that you all have a great evening. Hope you have a great rest of your week. Hope that you are thinking about where you can be more diligent, where you can be more judicious, and where you can be more intentional and be less entitled. With that, don't forget that this new life is for everyone. So as always, let's change the way that we think, so change the way that we live. And until next time, stay blessed.